Welcome, everyone, to the One More Game podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jeremy Culver, a.k.a. Darcy, and with me is the California Thirst Quencher, Pete Leisure. Pete, how you doing, man?
Dude, we finally did it. It was like 9 days in a row. We finally broke the triple-digit streak. We were only like 99 degrees yesterday.
Look at you.
It was like, woo! I'm doing okay. In all seriousness, last night was pretty fun. Specifically, we pre-recorded an episode with Sharif. That was the first time we did it. I think it might have been, I don't know if it was you've done a three-person podcast before. Certainly the first one I've ever been a part of, and Sharif is awesome. So it was great to interact with him. And also, it was the official opening of the NFL season last night.
Yes.
And I don't know if you watched that game. That game was
fascinating.
That game was fascinating to watch.
Yes.
Not from a good game standpoint, but I already thought the Bills had like the best roster in the league. And they just looked markedly better than the Rams, who created 4 turnovers. It's not like they were like awful. They played a solid game, but they were just the offense just wasn't able to move the ball at all. Just that defense of the Bills, man, was pretty insane. And also I found out, so one of my roommates I'm sorry to keep going on with this, but one of my roommates is an Iowa fan, and they played South Dakota State last week, and they won 7-3.
Yes.
And they won. The 7 points wasn't a touchdown. Yep. It was a field goal and 2 safeties, which I don't think I'd ever seen before. And that was
I have not.
All right.
I know at least firsthand, I can never recall a game like that where, yes, as you said, the 7 points scored was 2 safeties and a field goal. It was insane. But of course, that game happened. But just to comment on what you said, first off, yes, the football game, I was glued to watching it the entire time. I love football, so of course I was just watching it on my phone. So that was a very interesting game. And as you said, how things transpired there was very interesting. And then, of course, the podcast, I have never... the One More Game podcast, we have never done a 3-person episode, but I have done a 3-person episode of a podcast before, of one of my old podcasts, The Rift, which was about League of Legends. I did a 3-man podcast one time on there, just once, so this was only the second time we had done it. So everybody, of course, a little tease, look forward to that in 2 weeks from today, because again, after this, we're going on a small hiatus as I am getting ready to move. And just shout out real quick in the chat, Cobalt, thank you so much for stopping here and of course checking out the podcast as we record this over on youtube.com/pressstart28, where you can join us as we do this discussion. But let's get into the introduction of the podcast. So everybody, welcome to the One More Game podcast. This is a podcast that is centered around making sure you're informed about all the video game news happening around the world, whether it's Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation, or PC. If there's news that you need to know about, we'll make sure that you know about it. When you're listening to this on your podcast service, make sure you hit the subscribe button or the follow button, depending on what your service offers. And if your podcast service allows reviews, please leave a 5-star review and tell everyone why you love the One More Game podcast, because we really enjoy bringing this to you each and every Friday. If you'd like to be part of the show by asking a question or suggesting a topic for discussion, head on over to pressstartnews.net/onemore-game and fill out that submission form, and your submission could be used on the next episode, or you could drop it in the chat live over on youtube.com/pressstart28 as we record it live, which is going on right now. And again, thank you, Cobalt Hawk, for being here as part of that discussion. So if you're listening to this on the podcast services, make sure next time you come in and tune in live. But if this is your first time to the podcast, welcome to the podcast. I hope you enjoy your listen, and I hope you enjoy your stay. But if you are returning, you already know what it is. We start off every single podcast talking about what we've been playing lately. So, Pete, what have you been playing lately?
Shout out to Sharif, who's also in the chat currently. He said, hey, I'm here too.
Yes.
He didn't want to be left out.
He hadn't chatted yet, so I didn't know. So, Sharif, thank you for being here.
No. That's why I was trying to cover you for you, man. I was trying to get in there. So along with the standard fare that I have been playing the last few weeks, I've also been playing a game where that actually showed up on one of the topics for today. On the Game Pass for Xbox, Disney Dreamlight Valley. I dabbled in that a little bit. It's an all right game. I don't know if I'm going to go back to it with any sort of regularity. It kind of feels, it has the feel of like kind of like a type of game like Genshin Impact, where it's just I don't know if it's a mobile game because, like I said, I played it on the Game Pass, like Genshin is, but it does feel like a thing that they're going to just continuously update. Basically, what happens is you play, you have your PC, you create your PC at the beginning, you choose their facial features and all that stuff, and you get teleported basically to this village where all the Disney characters live, but it's the person that was like called I think it was called like the leader or something like that. Basically, he was like the mayor or something like that, a leader of this the area, and friends with all the characters. Up and left one day, and they suddenly things started kind of going bad. These like kind of like thorns. I think they're called like night thorns came, and when the Disney characters get close to the night thorns, they start forgetting and like having their memories kind of get taken away for a little bit, sealed off. So you meet Merlin from Sword in the Stone, a classic Disney movie if you haven't seen it. And he sort of starts guiding you through these little quests to you meet Scrooge. I've met Scrooge McDuck. I've met Goofy. I'm supposed to be meeting Mickey in a little bit. And you do kind of like the standard like MMO kind of thing where they're like, oh, hey, gather X amount of this, go clear like X amount of thorns. There really hasn't been any enemies that I've fought. I don't know if that's a thing yet. So it kind of feels like that. Kind of feels like it might be a little bit of one of those like farming games, Harvest Moon kind of games. I think I've never really dabbled in those, but it kind of has that vibe when I was looking at when I was from the stuff I've watched of that. So it's kind of interesting. Again, I don't know if I'm going to like play it for that long or go back to it, but it was a nice little different trip. And some of the music is like a lot of the music is just like rehashes or redos of some classic themes from Disney movies. Like a part of your world from The Little Mermaid I recognized, and just stuff like that. And that was it's a nice trip down memory lane. It's a nice homage to the classics so far, at least a little bit that I've played. So that was kind of fun too.
Yeah, so I don't know if there is any combat per se in the game, but just to answer your other question, the game is currently available in early access format, just so that everyone knows, on Nintendo Switch, PC, on Xbox and PlayStation, and it says coming soon, and it shows the App Store icon, but it does not show the Google Play icon. So I'm not 100% sure if that'll eventually be coming to both Apple as well as Android, but that is on there right now, and you can play it as of the right now, as Pete said, on Game Pass, or you can buy the Founders Edition on the various platforms that you want to do and dive into it, because it's not officially per se out yet.
Yeah.
But
have you beaten The Last Remnant yet? Or did you have another question?
No, not yet at all. But
oh my god!
But I just wanted to comment real quick on it. I know that for those that like Animal Crossing, or as you did say, Harvest Moon, I think that game takes inspiration from those, and so like it's going to be a lot of the farming sim, life sim aspect, but it does say, of course, on there it's a cross between life simulation and adventure. I know that some people were very happy with it, so we'll see how it goes. I just want to real quick, Cobalt Hawk is calling me out saying I'm still struggling with birds in The Last Remnant. I am not. I beat that bird, okay, for the record. But no, so last night after we got done recording, and I have, of course, been getting ready to get ready to pack. I, played some various games. So just across the week, right, I played a little bit of The Last Remnant. I played a little bit of Resonance of Fate, as I kind of talked a little bit about. But yesterday in the recording, which we pre-recorded, of course, again, episode for 2 weeks from now, I had said that I was looking forward to Moonbreaker, which is about to come out. And I made this comment during the podcast that I said, I have not gotten into the early access yet, or the play test. They haven't announced exactly what the play test is, but at some point I'll get to play it. And sure enough, after we finished recording, they announced there was a play test, and it started last night. So I played that a little bit, and it's actually quite a bit of fun. It doesn't say it's under an NDA, so I can talk about it. But it's like basically like it's in essentially a virtual tabletop game. So you use like miniature figurines that are on this board, and each of them have different abilities, different commands in a sense what they can do. You have your main person who is called your captain. If they die, you lose the game. But then you can spawn at certain points a different figurine to use in as well in the combat. And it kind of reminds me in the way that it lays out the gameplay, almost like the various card games, so Legends of Runeterra, Hearthstone, or whatever, that it's like each turn you get another energy piece, which I think in this one they call it Crimson. You get a new energy that you can use to spawn or use abilities and things of that nature. And when I first dropped in, I didn't realize where the tutorial was. So I kind of dropped in, played against the computer whooped my butt, and I was like, I need to figure out how to play a little bit better. And then I finally figured out where the tutorial was, watched that, and then I went through with the actual tutorial where then you can like play, did that, and then I played against a computer, beat that, and then I played against a person online, and I destroyed them. So they must have been the same way I was when I first dropped in, which was like, oh, I see the play button, let me hit that and just start playing. But I enjoyed it so far. There is one of the things that they touted, of course, is that it has a really robust painting system for your miniatures, so you can paint them to the way that you want. Again, this game was announced at Gamescom, and I, of course, messed around with that because like that was part of like the quests that you can get to get some coins, which all the characters are unlocked right now, but they did say once early access hits, you will have to, of course, grind to like unlock the characters. But those are some of the quests to get the coins to unlock those characters. And I actually enjoyed the painting mode more than I thought I would. I normally don't mess around with these things because they can get very cumbersome, but it actually explains it pretty well how to paint it. Now, I didn't get like super crazy with it, but I painted one character, just trying it out and seeing how it goes, and I thought it turned out really nice. So I kind of look forward to seeing how it goes and what the price will be when it does enter early access, which is later this month. I want to say it's on the 28th or 29th or something of that nature. It's in an episode in 2 weeks. You'll find out the exact date. But I thought it was pretty fun. So that's kind of what I ended up playing last night instead of getting further in Last Remnant. So forgive me for not beating the Last Remnant yet.
Well, all right. I mean, I guess it's not like most of the games that I talk about on here I've beaten either. So, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll give you a pass.
Exactly.
Give you a pass.
All
Don't
right.
let it happen again.
All right, everybody, that's what we've been playing lately. Let's get to our gaming catalog because we do have quite the bit of things to talk about on here. That's starting with, of course, Disney and Marvel Game Showcase reactions, PlayStation responding to the Call of Duty offer from Microsoft, Deviation Games is losing one of its founders, and EA announced who will be heading the Battlefield narratives. That's all coming up here on the One More Game podcast, but we're going to get started with our main catalog, and that is, again, the Disney Marvel Game Showcase 2022 that just ran earlier today. Now, Pete, I always ask you how we want to tackle the discussion because of the fact that we could always break it down completely or start it off in just kind of pros and cons. So, Pete, how do you want to start this discussion on Disney and Marvel Game Showcase?
I think the pros and cons in this one is a little bit better of a format. It was kind of like a last minute thing that we threw together, and it was only like a 20-minute showcase. It wasn't exactly that long. It was a little longer if you were following on IGN, which I ended up doing, and was kind of listen to some of the aftermath and listen to some of the extra stuff. But you know, I think pros and cons and just take a kind of dabbling in a little bit, especially since we got so many other topics to talk about. It's not like the PlayStation or Summer Games where that was kind of like our whole focus, and this is kind of like just a really short thing.
All right, so when you get into your pros and cons, I want you to first start off. I know a lot of people hate doing this. I actually hate doing it too, but I want to do it because it's easier and simpler to at least help formulate your thoughts and defense of your pros and cons. So, Pete, grade the showcase and give me pros and cons on what led you to, if you had, grading it.
I think they said this is their first Disney Marvel
This was their
game
first game showcase.
first
Yes.
one. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to give this a B minus. I think this is a solid first attempt. Not a great one, but it was a solid one. There wasn't any really big reveals, like any like anything that was like major that it was like, oh, we were waiting to hear about, like with the Sony showcase where they showed stuff for the new Final Fantasy coming out, and then you know when they were talking about some of the Square Enix stuff, things like that. It was a little more about stuff we already kind of knew. There was one thing that was, I don't know, it doesn't feel like gaming companies usually do this kind of thing. Probably one of the, I wouldn't say it's a pro, but one of the things that kind of like caught my eye the most was the unnamed Marvel's Marvel's game by Skydance Media. And I wasn't sure I missed the name. Like that was the weirdest part. Like, so like when the IGN was interviewing some of the people that are a part of it later on in their thing, I actually like listened in to make sure that it's like an unnamed Marvel's project. I'm like, okay, it's not that I didn't that I missed that. They just didn't throw out a name, which I don't think is usually how that works out. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, they normally throw like Project Blah, like they give it a code name of some sort. It was my wife did the same thing. Goes, what was the name of that game? I was like, there wasn't one.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if that was only me. All right, so that's that's a good. So I guess it's a pro in the sense of like it was a unique way to capture my attention. Like, oh, what's this thing? Oh, well, I guess we're not going to find out, but it looks like it's like Hydra against like some heroes that you get to be a group with, like Black Panther and Captain America. A couple of things that I was like also high on, the Marvel Snap mobile card game, which one of the devs is Ben Brode, who worked on Hearthstone, especially in the early years, which was also probably one of not one of the most well-known person working on Hearthstone while he was there, because he was always the kind of the front man, the rah guy. So that was interesting. I also was interested in Disney Illusion Island. That game seemed kind of cool. It was a platformer, the kind of looking thing. You get to play as like Mickey or Minnie or Donald or Goofy, and they each have their own unique abilities, kind of thing. And I also the kind of the quippiness and the humor involved in some of the cutscenes they showed was kind of like right up my alley. So that was another thing. Some of the things I didn't care for, kind of like I said before, one of the cons is like there wasn't anything major that I felt personally was like just captivated me outside of like the unnamed Marvel project, which I don't know if that's usually the way you want to go about that kind of thing. I'm not big into like racing games, so Speedstorm was kind of whatever. I'm also not necessarily well known into the known into some of the other games that they got coming out. So like a lot of the Marvel, like the Strike Force mobile game with Red Hulk, I didn't like, was kind of like disinterested in. I would have like if you're, I guess a showcase is usually just like kind of like an appetizer platter, but like I would have liked more knowledge about like what was going on with Disney Dreamlight Valley, because it seems like something that they're super into, and they're kind of just like, oh, by the way, we're having a new Toy Story adventure. And that seems like you kind of could have went more into that. Again, they did in the IGN thing, IGN post-show section, if you stuck around for that. But I was kind of like, wish they would have actually gone a little bit more into during the show itself. A lot of the games looked kind of fun, but like not really things that I would want to play. But I will say, shout out to the host, Blessing. I'm gonna shatter this name.
Blessing Adeoye Jr.
Adeoye. Okay, I was gonna go like Adoye. So Adeoye Jr. I thought he was great. I thought he was really good and hosting the show. So shout out to him. That was definitely a pro.
Yeah, Blessing is great. Go listen to him on the Kind of Funny podcast. He is amazing over there. He is one, of course, the host of the various Kind of Funny podcasts that go on over there, and I'm a huge fan of him. So shout out to him. He did a great job on the showcase. Yep. You listed off quite a bit of pros. You were very like very friendly with this showcase, which I'm going to take the bad cop approach then, because of course I can't just sit here and do this over and over. I'm giving it a C minus, and the only reason I give it a little bit higher than like a, you know, in the D range or lower is for exactly what you said, that it was their first showcase. But one thing, it felt very quick, which is great. I'm glad that it felt quick, right?
Did not overstay its welcome.
It went through things very, very quickly. But the problem was, for me, is Disney and Marvel have such a wide breadth of games that are out there that they could show, they could tap into, things of that nature. And they did in the sizzle reels. But the problem was, in the sizzle reels, just open the show and to end the show, it made me go, oh, like, are we going to get some new information on Kingdom Hearts 4? Are we going to get some new information on some of these other various games? I wasn't expecting something major or crazy, but at least touch on the fact that you're talking about a Kingdom Hearts 4 eventually coming up, because some people may not have realized, like my wife, who listens to this podcast and we talked about when Kingdom Hearts 4 was announced, forgot about. So it's one of those things where it's like, it's a good reminder to even just put it there, not in a sizzle reel, because a sizzle reel is totally different. So I was just like, by the end of it, literally when it ended, I said, wait, that's it? That was all? And so that's the thing. It's like they really focused on their mobile games, which is fine. Mobile games make them a lot of money. I mean, mobile games make a lot of money regardless. But I'm just like with you. The Strike Force didn't capture me. The Mirrorverse didn't capture me. Snap captured me to the point that, of course, from before when it first was announced, I got interested in it. But I still am like not too big onto the card game aspects, unless it's like a card game that I'm like really invested in. So like, for instance, like when Hearthstone first announced, right, I was very invested in that game. Magic Arena, very invested on the presentation in that game. Snap, just like, while it still looks good, and from what I've heard is good, the way it's presented always feels like it's like an afterthought. It's not like this focus that they're really trying to push going forward. So like, that didn't capture me. The way Tron opened up, did you realize, which I didn't, that Tron is a visual novel game that's coming up? No mention.
No, I did not.
Exactly. No mention whatsoever of what the heck that was. I saw it originally, you know, when it first opened, and I said, oh, that looks like Tron. And then sure enough, of course, in the middle of that circle, it shows the Tron logo, and I can't remember the exact name. I'm going to look real quick. Tron Identity.
I believe.
It shows that, and then it just ends. And it was like, you're opening your showcase with an announcement of a game, but nothing. It's literally just a teaser trailer. And it's not even teasing anything of the game. It's literally just announcing a title and that there is a game. And that was it. I had no clue what the heck it was, what we were going to be doing. Again, I didn't know it was a visual novel until I went to IGN's article afterwards to see the wrap up. And it was just like, they fumbled the bag so much, even with it being their first showcase, because it's not the first showcase ever. And that's the thing you have to keep in mind. They, for years, have been a part of other showcases. They've been a part and helped out in other showcases announcing their titles. They've seen what people on the internet say is a good showcase. They've seen what people on the internet have said is a bad showcase. Why did they put this together? Like, that's the thing that I'm just upset. Like, I'm upset about. They could have presented this better, and that's why it's so negative to me. But to get on the good cop side, just to point out some of the positives, right there with you. While, yes, unfortunately for myself, I saw that it leaked early, so like I wasn't surprised by it at the very end. But the Captain America Black Panther game, that was really cool. So I'm like, awesome, like, cool. Again, didn't really get to see what it is, what's the story going to be like, and as you said, like, what the title is going to be. but it was still cool to see that game is going to be coming at some point. I have been really high on Marvel's Midnight Suns, and so getting some new gameplay action and, of course, getting the new release date was great. That really caught my attention. Right there with you, the Illusion Island, I thought that was cool. I still like don't know exactly if I would get it or like if it'll be a lot of fun per se, but at least the presentation and how it went was great. And I loved the ending of the TBD where they were like, TBD, is that some placeholder text or is that the whole thing? And they're like, yes. I thought that was great. And then while I don't know if it's going to be any good or anything of that nature, I did get interested in the Marvel World Heroes, the AR game from Niantic. I was like, I want to know what this is like, what this could be like, because Pokemon Go obviously is still a huge thing, and we just talked about before Niantic laying people off because they're still like trying to find their next big thing. I think Marvel World Heroes could be that if it's presented well, but again, we didn't get to see what that is like. And I know there's a lot of Avatar fans out there, so like I'm happy they got to see a little bit more of the game, and the weird mobile MMO that's going to be coming out as well. So like that's interesting, but I'm not a huge Avatar fan, so like that was kind of like meh for me overall. But yeah, I give it C-. You B-, me C-. And Sharif
you
in
sounded
chat,
like you wanted to give it a lower. Yeah,
I want to give it a lower. I want to give it a lower,
Sure,
but
you gave it like an F minus or something, or
I wouldn't give it that low. No, again, there were good things about it. It wasn't like it. I have seen worse showcases from my years of watching showcases and covering showcases. I have seen worse showcases, but it's just like Sharif said, and I'm going to read it here for those that, of course, are listening to this on our podcast, following, not here live on youtube.com/pressstart28. But Sharif says here in this chat, for such a high caliber of names like Disney and Marvel, this wasn't acceptable. It was maybe 4 games worth mentioning, and that's me stepping out of my genre of games that I normally play. And that's kind of what I agree with, where it's like, I want to give it lower because of the Disney Marvel name, but I'm being nice because it is their first showcase. And here's the thing where it's like they have time to like build from this. They do a great job with their showcases when it comes to their shows, like Disney Plus announcing, of course, the Marvel cinematic movies. They do a great job with that, right? Building hype. They can do that with the video games too. They just they got to figure out, I guess, what they want to do with it, and this was not the good first showing, in my opinion.
Yeah, you brought up a lot of good points. The only thing I would really kind of push back on is like I don't know if they could actually show much about Kingdom Hearts 4, considering like Square Enix as the developers, right? It's not like anything that like they have the Disney characters, but they don't, other than like letting them have access to the characters. How much development do they actually have in that? So Square Enix would probably be the ones allowing them or not allowing them to show that stuff off.
So I'm going to push back on that 2 ways. So the
push
first
back on
one,
my pushback.
I'm pushing back on your pushback. So the first one, though, is at the end of the day, though, Disney still is handing the license over to them to make the game. So like they technically have in a big way whether it goes or not. If Disney just decides to drop, for instance, I'm not saying this would happen, but if they just decided to drop, the license over there, Kingdom Hearts 4 likely doesn't come out. That's just the way it goes, right? But secondly, I don't expect, and I really mean this, I didn't expect that Disney was going to announce here, hey, Kingdom Hearts 4 coming out next year. Here's the release date. Here's this, all that. None of that. But what I would have liked is maybe, again, an additive part of the trailer that we already saw. So it can be one of those similar things where it's like we see the same trailer we just saw, but there is a 10, 20, 30-second difference that is like new clips that we haven't seen before, right? So it's like you get a better insight of like where development is heading. Or it could be a new cinematic trailer, again, maybe not showing gameplay or anything, but a different tone, maybe like this time, like from Sora's first person's perspective the entire time of the trailer or something, right? Just like a new showing of it. Again, the teaser trailer, having it there at the beginning and end teaser sections is fine, but I think for a wide majority of audience, having it as part of the actual showcase, because the teaser trailers are always there just to like give a flashy beginning and a flashy, see you later. Having it as part of the showcase would have just helped with making it feel bigger, I guess, because it was filled with so many mobile games that like doesn't, I guess, from my gamer perspective, feel like the AAA experience that Disney and Marvel can bring to the table. And that's kind of what I was meaning. So, all right. We've been talking about that for quite a bit. Let's move on to the next thing, which is PlayStation responding to the Call of Duty offer from Microsoft. So this is coming from The Verge, written by Tom Warren, and it's called "Sony Says Microsoft's Call of Duty Offer Was Inadequate on Many Levels." Sony has labeled Microsoft's offer to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation inadequate on many levels. Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer revealed to The Verge last week that the company is committed to keeping Call of Duty on PlayStation for several more years beyond the existing marketing deal Sony has with Activision. But Sony isn't impressed, though, just as Microsoft is in the middle of trying to get their Activision Blizzard deal approved by regulators. Now, in a comment, I want to first state that like Jim Ryan had said he wasn't going to comment on it, but here is what he kind of ended up saying anyways. Microsoft has only offered for Call of Duty to remain on PlayStation for 3 years after the current agreement between Activision and Sony ends. After almost 20 years of Call of Duty on PlayStation, the proposal was inadequate on many levels and failed to take account of the impact on our gamers. We want to guarantee PlayStation gamers continue to have the highest quality Call of Duty experience, and Microsoft's proposal undermines this principle. Now, Ryan's statement makes it clear that several more years, it's actually 3 years after Sony's Call of Duty marketing deal ends. And Bloomberg originally reported earlier this year that Microsoft was committed to releasing Call of Duty on PlayStation for at least the next 2 years, suggesting that Sony's marketing deal for the franchise could expire in 2024, and that would mean that the offer was only up till 2027. Quote, "I hadn't intended to comment on what I understood to be a private business discussion, but I feel the need to set the record straight because Phil Spencer brought this into the public forum," continues Ryan in the statement. Spencer said Microsoft's offer goes well beyond typical gaming industry agreements, but it's clearly not enough to ease Sony's concerns over the franchise. Now, there's more to this article, but I want to turn things over to you, Pete. What is your takeaway of Jim Ryan kind of airing his grievances now about this whole issue and the contract?
It doesn't surprise me that Phil Spencer, who has come out and stated that he is totally for there being less and less console exclusives, would take one of the biggest names of all, biggest gaming franchises in the industry, and only offer a few more years after the fact. After saying that, that is totally and not surprising for somebody that would do that. Not Phil Spencer specifically. I just mean basically business owners in general, because the Call of Duty license is extremely lucrative. And while I think it's probably more lucrative for keeping it on all the consoles, they'll just keep raking in that money as it's sold everywhere. I mean, you could also argue that's like, hey, yeah, like it's still pretty lucrative if we only keep it on our consoles, because there's probably a significant contingent of gamers that are Call of Duty gamers that would just buy an Xbox if they could only play Call of Duty on Xbox or on a PC. So yeah, that doesn't actually surprise me that might have been the end of goal. Now I do want to state that just because they only initially offered 3 years, that doesn't mean that they wouldn't have like re-upped the contract once 2027 end of that deal would have come closer. But yeah, like, you're just not gonna, like, after it doesn't surprise me at all that after saying some stuff about how they want to make sure like Call of Duty is available to everybody, and how Phil Spencer himself has said that he wants less console exclusives to be around, that they actually might be interested in trying to make one of the biggest franchises into being a console exclusive specifically for the Xbox.
Yeah. So let me start with I saw a number of people online on my Twitter page just kind of blasting Jim Ryan over these comments because of the number of exclusives that PlayStation does have, right? Like, again, Spider-Man currently only available on, well, now, of course, on PC, but just in general, right? Spider-Man only available on PlayStation. Final Fantasy VII Remake only available, again, now on PC, but on PlayStation. Like, some people are basically crying hypocrite and foul on Jim Ryan on this, but I guess from my perspective, like, I understand what he's saying because, again, Call of Duty is the largest franchise making money maker in gaming industry. It's just that way. We've talked about it here before about how much the game sells. Again, last year in just 2 months, it literally went from Vanguard being the number one most profitable game in the year, where also Black Ops was the number 2. It's one of those things where it just sells like hotcakes, and it has been a PlayStation thing for so long. I mean, yes, during the Xbox 360 era, if I remember correctly, it was basically Microsoft had like the early DLC and PlayStation got it later. But then in the PlayStation 4, it flipped and it became PlayStation got it earlier than Microsoft did. But the Call of Duty League was for many years, and I think still is to this point at the moment, was on PlayStation. They may have just switched to PC last year or something like that, but it was played on PlayStation consoles. And so, like, of course, Jim Ryan is understandably going to end up commenting on it because Phil Spencer commented on it and was trying to, say a certain thing. And it's exactly like you said. This does not mean that Phil Spencer was not going to re-up the contract afterwards, but understandably, from Jim Ryan's perspective, there is a chance, right? You do this deal, you go to 2027, and then Phil Spencer's like, actually, it's gone. We're not doing it anymore. We're not putting it on there. So you don't know what it means for the longevity. And so it's going to, of course, cause this confusion or this uncertainty, I guess I will say, from Jim Ryan's perspective. At the end of the day, it's always going to come down to what the regulators decide to do and what they decide to have happen. And granted, I think that in some instances, console exclusives are good and healthy for the relationship because it does help with, of course, getting purchases for your console. Just like it is, obviously, Sony Studios making games for Sony consoles, Microsoft, Xbox Studios making Xbox games, Nintendo making Nintendo games. But when it comes to something like this, where it was a third party for so long, and it's the biggest moneymaker there is out there, it's understandable that this is going to be a tense situation for a lot of people, not just, of course, as gamers, but the companies themselves. So I don't know. Personally, to me, this doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me that Phil Spencer only gave 3 years to the current deal. I understand why Jim Ryan is upset by it. We'll see, again, what it comes down to as the end of the day from the regulators. But it's just this is the way that I would describe it, right? These are two heads of a company arguing over it. Gamers don't need to sit here and be like, well, hey, Jim Ryan, here's all these exclusives you had. That's a totally different story. Let's not split hairs here. Like, we're talking about, again, the biggest franchise in Call of Duty for both consoles.
Well, and Jim Ryan's not the one that's been coming out here and saying like, hey, I want less console exclusives, while also just buying a major game developer like Activision Blizzard and having several of their upcoming releases that were originally going to be multi-platform all of a sudden just only available on Xbox. So, at the end of the day, they're billionaires. Like you said, they're billionaires fighting over like billionaire stuff. It's just a bunch of money. And but in this case, it can't affect gamers. And I know Cobalt, you don't seem to be as big of a fan of Call of Duty anymore as you seems like in chat, since you said they should just let Xbox have the franchise anyway because because it's trash now. But I mean, it's apparently a dumpster fire still makes a lot of money. They're lighting a lot of money on fire. So if they even if it is trash at this point. So
yeah,
it's just like I said, to me, it's just like for the only thing that gets me. I'm surprised people are mad at Jim Ryan. I don't know what they thought. Like he shouldn't have just commented on it. Were they fans of like what Phil Spencer was saying, and then all of a sudden find
Oh
out? That
boy,
makes me,
the if you could just see gaming Twitter sometimes that goes on my timeline,
probably looks a lot like wrestling Twitter and Magic Twitter. Honestly,
yeah, it's
So,
just interesting. Like, I don't even. That could be a whole
that's a nice way
podcast
to put it.
episode in its
Yeah,
own.
let's move on. Let's move on. Let's move
Yeah,
on.
we're
Let's,
gonna
let's,
move
I
on.
don't
We're
wanna-
gonna actually talk a little bit more about PlayStation, but we're gonna be talking about Deviation Games, and it's losing its one of its founders. This is coming from the videogameschronicle.com, coming from Tom Ivan. It is PlayStation-backed Deviation game loses former Call of Duty boss. Deviation Games, the PlayStation-backed studio established by a pair of Call of Duty Black Ops veterans, has lost one of its co-founders. In a statement released on Thursday, the California-based company confirmed that Chief Creative Officer Jason Blundell is no longer working at the studio. Now, former Treyarch co-studio head Blundell was one of the lead creators of Call of Duty Zombies mode before leaving Activision in 2020 after 13 years. Now, following his departure, Deviation will continue to be led by fellow co-founder Dave Anthony, who also assumed the role of game director this year. Deviation also announced that Westwood Studios Command & Conquer Blade Runner co-founder Louis Castile has joined the company as senior vice president of development, and they've had, of course, a number of other recent hires. Now, the studio is developing an original IP which will be published by Sony Interactive Entertainment, and they wrote in a blog post last year, "We're drawing on what we've learned over our collective decades making games, but we're also out to make something fresh and brimming with innovation like you've never experienced before." So, Pete, let me ask you this. How shocked are you, I guess, that this guy co-founded the studio and left before even knowing the announcement of their game?
Uh, I mean, it sounds like so reading the article, the fact that uh, Dave Anthony had already assumed the role of game director earlier this year tells me that this was probably already in the works of for a few months now at least. And it makes me wonder if there was a little bit stuff behind the scenes where maybe Blundell was thinking, not necessarily that it was like argumentative or a toxic work environment or anything like that. It may have been, I don't know, obviously, but more so on the point of like Blundell got into something that he thought he was getting into and it ended up being something different, which, can happen. You're like, hey, this is a project I kind of want to work on. And maybe after a little while, you're like, this isn't what I thought it was. And I'm kind of not a big fan of it. So, it is a little surprising that he didn't like seem to even know like the idea that what the game was going on or what like the new IP that was coming up. That part's a little strange, but yeah, if I had to guess, there's a little bit, at least a little bit of uh issue going on behind the scenes with some of the higher ups, especially like I said, since Dave Anthony assumed the role of game director earlier this year already. So
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you in that factor because it already, the changing of the game director role happened earlier this year, that there must have been something going on in the pipeline that like Jason was leaving. Maybe it's family reasons, maybe it is something at the studio or whatever, but like it seemed like they were preparing the steps to do it and they finally just made the announcement, hey, this is happening. But I just find it weird because the way this announcement, the announcement of the studio, as well as the announcement of they were working on a game with PlayStation, happened at Summer Game Fest Kickoff Live 2021. It was last year's Summer Game Fest. And I remember them being on stage and they were like talking about the game and their excitement about what they're going to be working on. But of course, all we knew is that it was a AAA title being published and that I think it's a first-person shooter was the only thing that we've known about this game so far. And so it was one of those things where it's like the fact that he's leaving before we even get a title, an image of the game, concept art or anything like that just seems very weird. And so I think it might come down to they founded the studio. They were expecting to do these things, and he just decided he didn't want to do this anymore. Maybe there's a job that's out there that he decided to step away from being a studio head to go work on. Maybe, like, for instance, he's going back towards Activision Blizzard with the fact that they're going to possibly be purchased by Microsoft now. There could be a number of things up there, but I just found this interesting. I guess this is the easiest way I could describe it, because it just, again, for me personally, when I try to put it in perspective, I don't know how I would feel about finding a studio, announcing a game, but then leaving before I even got to tell you guys what the game title is. I would be like, whoa, that's quite a whirlwind in a year's span. So, good luck to Jason.
Yeah, it's definitely a little odd. But yeah, good luck to him. And I want to make this point clear. I know this is a little bit of a side, but if he felt the need that he needed to step away for whatever reason, family reasons, personal reasons, what have you, maybe he just like we were saying, maybe he didn't like what the job was. He wasn't what he thought it was. All manner of people should be able to leave whatever jobs they want, no questions asked. Because you know what? The people in charge, they can fire you because of what do you call it, at will employment. So they can just kick your keister out on the street and you walk into work one day. So yeah, he wants to leave because he's not happy. Good, let him leave. That he has that right, and he should be able to do that. And as long as he wasn't the cause of any of the issues, like if we saw with Activision Blizzard, like but presumably since this seemed to be in the works, that it was more amicable than that.
Yeah, I agree with you. So again, good luck to Jason. Let's go to our next article coming from IGN. This is written by Diego Ramos Becerra, and it is Ridgeline Games, Marcus Leto's new studio, will develop Battlefield narrative campaign. New studio Ridgeline Games, which is led by Halo co-creator Marcus Leto, has been established to create a new narrative campaign set in the Battlefield universe, according to a press release from Electronic Arts. Electronic Arts has also confirmed that creative director Lars Gustafsson, who's been with the franchise since its very first game, will be leaving the company to pursue other opportunities. Lars has dedicated a substantial portion of his life to Battlefield and is proud to have helped shape the franchise into what it is today, the release reads. He is excited to pass the baton to the next generation of Battlefield creators at DICE, Ripple Effect, Industrial Toys, and Ridgeline Games. According to the release, the company is composed of industry veterans from around the world, which will be extremely important because, according to them, they'll be instrumental to building the future of the franchise. Specifically, Ridgeline is creating a narrative campaign set in the Battlefield universe, and it is unclear if this is going to be tied to an entirely new game. Leto did say, "It is a great honor to have the opportunity to collaborate with DICE and Ripple Effect and lead the charge on expanding the narrative, storytelling, character development opportunities in the Battlefield series." Just to have here, beyond working with to co-create Halo series of games, Leto was also the creative director at Bungie, and then he left in 2012. And then he went on to serve as the president and creative director of V1 Interactive, which was responsible to make the game Disintegration, which I do have a preview of that game when it was about to launch here on the channel. So Pete, what do you think about this? The fact that there is potentially this new studio building a new narrative for a possible new Battlefield?
I want the new narrative to be, instead of Master Chief, I want it to be Master Beef. And he's just like this buff, like big meaty man slapping meat dude, just like just pounding his chest like that. That's what I want.
Is that the meat slap that you're talking about?
Hey, don't you disrespect Big E. Don't you disrespect Big E.
I'm just awesome.
Saying. Big meaty men slapping meat. That's the kind of pro wrestling that people like. All right. Anyway, getting more serious. This seems kind of cool. I did a little digging in Marcus Leto. I found it kind of funny that his Twitter handle, or his Twitter bio rather, says that he's the father of Master Chief. That's why I was like saying I want Master Beef, but it seems kind of funny. That Twitter bio. I don't know. It seems. I'm sure. Clearly, since he was part of the co-creators for the Master Chief and for the Halo universe at Bungie, I'm sure he's got some pretty good ideas to help out Battlefield. We know this last one wasn't particularly well received. It was upended by Halo Infinite, which wasn't exactly itself released pretty well, but Battlefield loved to blame them for the fact that they had problems with their release. So hopefully this new narrative that they're going to do It does help their current games and their next games. And also, shout out to Lars, moving on to pursue other opportunities. Uh, Dude's been working with Battlefield since the beginning, so he's a very creative mind, and a lot of creative people want to go and end up doing their own kind of doing their own thing. They don't want to be doing the same thing all the time. So, kudos to him, and I hope he finds a landing spot as well. But hope Leto, when he's creating the new narrative campaign, just makes a good game that a lot of people are going to enjoy. Because as we were talking about earlier, who knows how long Call of Duty is going to be, how much longer Call of Duty is going to be on PlayStation, and we already know Halo's not really going anywhere from Xbox. So Battlefield might be the only PlayStation game you could play these kind of shooters for a short while.
Yeah, so I always check this every time we talk about Battlefield, and so I just checked it, and Battlefield is still currently sitting at a mostly negative of 30%, but its most recent reviews, 2042, 52% of them have been positive, so it is at a current mixed for recent reviews. So I know part of that possibly is with the new season finally announced, but going back to this article at hand, we did have an article here a couple of months ago now about this rumor that EA was going to be handing basically Battlefield over to a new studio, and that it was going to be by Marcus Leto. So obviously it's good to have this confirmation aspect of it, and I'm right there with you. Maybe this can be the turnaround or the shot in the arm that Battlefield needs, because obviously Battlefield 2042, with it being an all online game, was not received very well, and obviously continues to not be received very well. As Cobalt Hawk even says in here, Battlefield 2042 is a disaster. But my only hesitation is Disintegration was, I even have it, as I talked about, I did a preview on it. I enjoyed that game. I played as the technical online preview of it, and I enjoyed what kind of concept it had. It had this weird, almost like spaceship shooter where you also controlled minions on the ground, or troops on the ground. But the game didn't get received very well. It didn't sell very well, and the studio closed, as well as the game's online service, in less than a year. It just did not, do a whole lot. So what I hope, though, is that was a fluke for Marcus Leto. It's one of those things that can happen. Sometimes we've seen it with people who had great experiences from the early in their career. Later in the career, they just continue to have a number of stumbles, and it's not like a one-time stumble, that there could be other ones. So it's one of those things where I hope that's not a repeat. Again, Disintegration I thought was a decent game, but it just did not do very well. So let's just hope for the best for it. And as I said last week when I came to talking about Halo, I want to see Halo in a good light. Battlefield is the same thing. I may not be a big Battlefield fan myself, but I want to see Battlefield in a good light, because competition and good games is what helps make better games. So if Battlefield can get to a good light, into a better light, we may see Call of Duty turn into a better game versus our listeners saying that the game is trash now, or the franchise is trash now. Maybe that'll be better. So let's go to our next article, because of timing's sake, we're going to talk a little bit about Final Fantasy VII Remake mod brings back the old look, and that is from PC Gamer, written by Jody McGregor, and it goes: a previous mod for Final Fantasy VII Remake swapped the high-resolution model of Cloud wearing a dress for a more low-poly look. But now the mod we've all been waiting for is here, one that replaces the expressive and high-resolution models of all Final Fantasy VII Remake's playable characters for the pointy polygons of the 1990s. Specifically, this one is the 1998 Windows version, which you can tell because unlike the 1997 PlayStation original, they've got mouths. The Polygon Players mod by Fantasy Raider replaces Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, and Barrett, as well as Yuffie and Sonnen from the intermission chapter in both gameplay and in-game, in-engine cutscenes, though the cinematics made with higher definition models will show the remake's characters. And of course, it is super weird when you see that contrast with some of the blocky, as they put it, Lisa Simpson hair and staircase eyebrows, along with the more modern look. You can, of course, go and install it now. It is a whole 6.5 megabytes of those polygons. But Pete, I guess I want to ask you, if you did pick up Final Fantasy VII Remake for the PC, would you be one of those to go install the old polygon look?
I'm not usually one that does mods, so probably not. But it was kind of funny watching the video where they were showing all the contrast, like they said, was pretty amusing to see. At least this is one of the more not about family friendly, but at least uh nice uh mods that I would actually think about downloading, not some of the other ones that we've seen,
Yes.
particularly with some of the dressing of some of the characters. We're not going to go any more into that. So I would consider it. Like I said, I don't usually do mods, but it was pretty fun to look at the video. It did remind me of watching Final Fantasy VII Machine Abridged by Team Four Star, because you have the mounts. Because I played Final Fantasy VII, I played the 1997, so I didn't actually realize that the 98 version had mounts on the polygon characters. I wasn't aware of this until literally just now, because I never like sought out information like that in that regard. So seeing the mounts on the polygon characters, that was my first thought, was the Team Four Star abridged version of Final Fantasy VII, because that was they animated little mounts on the characters when they were facing the screen. So
Nice. Nice.
it's a good
Yeah,
show. Go watch it. It's hilarious.
I think that, of course, I would be one of those people to install this mod, because I actually thought that it looks actually really well done
It
compared
doesn't.
to,
Yeah, it looks
yeah.
good.
I was surprised by it, and I'm also with you. I didn't realize that I realized the PlayStation version didn't have mouths, but I guess I didn't
Yeah.
realize that the PC version did have mouths. It was one of those things. So like, seeing the article, I was like, oh, that's why they have mouths. I thought that this mod just added the mouths, but yeah, it was interesting, and I think it was really really well done. So shout outs to that mod there. Real quickly, at the very end of this, we have an update real quick to Cyberpunk 2077. It of course came out yesterday, but Cyberpunk 2077 is getting a new update, and it's based on the Edge Runners anime that's coming out. So it was announced by CD Projekt Red that they were Cyberpunk 2077 was getting DLC, and it of course centers around that Edge Runners Netflix series that's coming out. It basically is a story-focused expansion that lets players take on the role of David Martinez, the protagonist of Edge Runners, in a tale taking place alongside the events that goes on in the main Cyberpunk 2077 game. And it is also the patch 1.6, which would be the final major patch for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions of the game. And also, as part of that announcement, that CD Projekt Red announced the new expansion, Fantasy Liberty, is the first expansion, also the currently only planned expansion of the game, and they dropped the PS1 or PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions of the game, which brought a lot of people unhappy, because the Xbox One exclusive version of Cyberpunk it was supposed to come with the DLC, and now they're getting refunds. So Pete, I guess, what is your thoughts about the DLC, and of course, what is your thoughts about the decision to not make this expansion on the last gen consoles?
I mean, I hope the DLC is great. Cyberpunk 2077 has had plenty of issues. I'm hoping that some of the recent updates and this DLC will right the ship, as it were. Hopefully, they'll make some of the stuff. It's cool that they're tying it into the Edge Runners animated series. Doing that tie-in. It's a really good way to market both products. You market the show to your gamers. You market the game to you can helps you market the game to the people that maybe see the show but haven't actually necessarily drawn interest into playing the game. So that's pretty cool. Not putting the DLC on PlayStation 4 and the Xbone, I think is not great, but that's a decision they already made, and we kind of already knew about that. So, I mean, at this point, eventually, they're going to just stop making games for the PS4 and Xbox One. We've discussed this before. I think that they should delay it a little longer, because it's been harder to get these next gen consoles of the PS5, and not as much as the Xboxes, but still not easy, and it's also super expensive. Sony announced that they're increasing the prices for their console, so I would wish that they would be a little bit more helpful to the customer in that regard. But I mean, eventually that they're just not like they do with older systems. They just stop making games for them and stop making newer editions for the older games. It is pretty shitty that the Xbox version was supposed to have the DLC and is not going to have the DLC now. That's kind of messed up, that they already said that. But if they're going to refund the money, at least they're not fully out of that. But if the people were buying it specifically to look for this DLC that now they're not getting, that's going to be a problem a little bit in that regard. And I'm sure there's definitely people are like, I'm buying this because we are also getting the DLC. And now they're not going to get that, especially if they have an Xbox One, which is not even going to have access to in the first place.
Yeah, the Xbox One Series X Cyberpunk edition was really cool looking, so of course I understand people wanting to get it, but of course getting the expansion with it was supposed to be the benefit, so at least they're getting the refund aspect of it. I don't remember how much the refund is. I think it obviously is going to be possibly the difference of what the expansion was supposed to be, but I'm not surprised because of course the last gen versions had a myriad of issues, tons of issues. It was even delisted for PlayStation for a long time. So like, I guess it's like a kind of notice it. And Cobalt kind of agreed with you in our chat. He said, of course, that like he understands dropping the last gen issue would make quite a few unhappy, but especially with the fact that it's still pretty difficult to get the new gen. But again, like he said there, the old hardware limitations is what was holding back Cyberpunk to begin with. So like, yeah. I'm not surprised by it. And at the same time, it's not like they're saying that the DLC isn't coming out at all. Remember, everyone who got Cyberpunk, whether it was on Xbox or on PlayStation, if they get the next gen version of that same series, they get the next gen version with it. So like they'll get to play this DLC once they finally get a hand on it, but it is what it is. It happens. Unfortunately, it sucks and it's not great, but you just gotta go. CD Projekt Red already knew last time that the game was terrible in last gen. Yep. What makes them think that the DLC was going to be good? So they just had to drop it. But I do want to say real quick, the Edge Runners Netflix series, we haven't talked about it on here yet, but I've seen of it so far, it looks really cool. So I'm actually looking forward to checking that out. But Pete, do you know when that DLC is coming out?
2023.
That is correct, 2023. But you don't want to wait that long. You want to pick up something this week. So I'm going to tell you all about what's coming up here on the releases schedule. And it starts with today, Friday, September 9th. You have NBA 2K23 for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Splatoon 3 for Switch. Betrayal at Club Low for PC. Broken Pieces for PC. Cat Maze for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. On Monday, September 12th, you have Kitsune Zero, which is the DLC for Super Bernie World, and that's coming out on PC. Tuesday, September 13th, you have Little Orpheus for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Scourgebringer for iOS and Android. 13 for Switch. Fallout 76 Expeditions, the Pit expansion for PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Lovecraft's Untold Stories 2 for PC. SCP Secret Files for PC. Sunday Gold for PC. Voice of Cards, The Beasts of Burden for PS4, Switch, and PC. World War I Isonzo for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Wednesday, September 14th, you have You Suck at Parking for Xbox Series, Xbox One, and PC. That's coming to Game Pass. Cube, 10th Anniversary for Xbox Series and PC. The Wandering Village for PC. Family Man for Xbox Series, Xbox One, and Switch. Thursday, September 15th, you have Blind Fates Ito no Yami for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Despot's Game Dystopian Army Builder for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. Fractured Online for PC. Ultimax for PC, VR, and Quest 2. Bear and Breakfast for Switch. Metal Hellsinger for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. That is coming to Game Pass. Outer Wilds for PS5 and Xbox Series. Splitgate, which is officially releasing out of early access for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Quick note, they are stopping development on that game to focus on their new game, but there will still be updates for Splitgate. Going back to the list, Wayward Strand for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. That is coming out Thursday. Still on Thursday, we have SBK 22 for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Grid Force, Mask of the Goddess for PC. Four Tales for Switch and PC. Ancora, Lost Day for Switch and PC. Stone's Keeper for PC. Dungeons 3 for Switch. Absolute Tactics, Daughters of Mercy for PC. Whateverland for PC. Lost Beyond for PC. And then Friday, September 16th, you have Hidden Through Time, Definitive Edition, PS4 and Switch. Plunder Panic for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, PC, and Mac. Pete, that is a ton of games. Any of these catching your attention?
You take a drink to catch your breath after that one. Jesus Christ. Splatoon 3. It's a big game coming out. Really interesting. I have a lot of friends that are into it. I'm just not gonna mention Voice of Cards. I'm just not gonna mention that. Even if I haven't played the second one and I haven't finished the first game yet, I'm not mentioning Voice of Cards: The Beasts of Burden. Buy that fucking game, people. It's really fun. The game's really fun so far. And because the main character is sassy, and also it kind of looks, it basically looks like Super Mario World, but instead they changed the main character. But she's got some sass in the trailer that I just watched. Kitsune Zero, Super Bernie World. Those are my three.
Yeah. So for myself, not mentioning the ones that you said, because of course you hit those on the head.
Best ones.
The ones that I'm gonna point out real quick is SCP Secret Files looked really cool. That is like a horror adventure game. I got that caught my attention. Metal Hellsinger is cool. I liked everything that I've saw from it, and the fact that it's coming out for Game Pass is a cool concept. That is of course like a rhythm shooter game that's coming out. Grid Force Mask of the Goddess. That game won some awards over at Gamescom this past couple of weeks, so that one I'm looking forward to. And the one that I do just want to make a quick mention, because there's a number of indie games actually on this list that I would love to talk about, but the last one I want to just kind of point out is Absolute Tactics: Daughters of Mercy. I actually found that one to look very interesting. While the art style didn't look, of course, the most polished, I still thought that it looked well done. And if I remember correctly, there is a demo for that one. There's a demo for a number of these indie titles for this week. But Absolute Tactics: Daughters of Mercy was another one that looks really cool. Before we wrap up the show, I just want to make some mentions of things that are going to be going on while I am away. So please remember, tomorrow, this is Saturday, September 10th, you have the Ubisoft Forward event that's going on at 12 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Central. That is going to have a number of listings, as well as apparently announcing several Assassin's Creed games. So that's something to look forward to. On Wednesday, September 14th, Ryu Ga Gotoku is going to be hosting their own showcase, and they're supposed to be teasing or showing off the new Yakuza projects. So we might be seeing, of course, the sequel to Yakuza Like a Dragon there, and possibly some spin-offs. Maybe we see another Judgment game, even though it's been rumored that Judgment is done. But that is something to look forward to. And then if you are a Call of Duty person, unlike Cobalt, who said that game is trash, Call of Duty Next Showcase is going on Thursday, September 15th, showing off Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and also showing off its multiplayer stuff, which of course a lot of people are looking forward to. So that's all going on while I'm going to be gone. So please keep those things in mind. But Pete, that is it for the show. Is there anything you want to leave our listeners with before we send them off for a small hiatus? But remember, there is One More Game podcast episodes coming out.
No, just everyone have a good time. Hope you have a safe move. Get everything over there. Thanks everybody, Sharif and Cobalt specifically, for showing up and being here for the live show. Even if Cobalt took a lot of grief from both of us because of his Call of Duty opinions, but I appreciate everybody showing up, and we'll see you again in a few weeks.
Yes, so everyone, thank you so much for being here, of course, for the One More Game podcast. And again, as I did mention, while I am taking a hiatus for my move, there will still be new episodes of the One More Game podcast coming out over the next 2 weeks. So next Friday, be here. There is a special guest for that episode. And then the following in 2 weeks, we have the 3-head show going on, as Pete mentioned earlier in this episode. But everybody, that's it here for the One More Game podcast. I've been one of your co-hosts, Jeremy Culver, aka Darcy. This is the California Thirst Quencher, Pete Leisure, and we really enjoy bringing this to you. So as always, everybody, stay hydrated, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep on gaming. We'll see you guys on the next episode.